Good evening. Welcome into On the Horn. I'm James Hayden. We are back again live from my little brother's room at my parents' house. We've got a loaded show for you guys tonight. We're going to talk about Sark's top 5 games at Texas as we reflect on 4 years in Austin for Steve Sarkisian. And then we'll get into the Blake Gideon news. Blake Gideon left. No more safeties coach for Texas. That's an open spot on the staff. We'll see what they do there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the spring game. People are thinking Texas may opt to not have a spring game this year and follow suit from what Nebraska did recently. And then finally, talk a little bit about Jahdae Barron. I didn't get to it last time, but Jahdae Barron was inducted into the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame for the Jim Thorpe Award. I yapped a little too much last time and did not get to my last point about Jahdae Barron getting inducted into Oklahoma, of all states, for his Thorpe Award-winning season. But yeah, let's just start by talking about Coach Sark's top 5 games at Texas. So at number 5, I think kind of an underrated game, probably not many people talk about, is at Kansas State. At number 13, Kansas State in 2022, when Steve Sarkisian and, a Texas team that people thought might have been a little bit underperforming went on the road and beat Kansas State. That Kansas State team went on to win the Big 12, beating Max Duggan's technical national runner-up, TCU Horned Frogs. I say technical because we all remember what happened to TCU in the national title, but technically they did make it there. And they actually, ended up beating a team who won the title the year after that. So it's an impressive season nonetheless. But the Kansas State team that Coach Sark went in and beat, they were number 13 at the time. If you guys remember that game, great running performance from Bijan, of course, and Quinn had a solid game. That was when he got back from injury. And Texas were underdogs in that game. And Texas was, I think, still ranked in the high 20s. And then they won that game and were able to get College game day against that aforementioned TCU Horned Frog team. And we all know what happened on that College game day game. But, hey, Texas wasn't quite there yet. But for that season, and, we're talking about 4 years, right? And there's been a ton of big game opportunities, but at number 5, I got to put at Kansas State. Winning at Will Howard, who's a formidable quarterback. We got to give him that. I know people like to dog on him a little bit, but now he's a national championship winning quarterback now. And yeah, let's get my mic working. There we go. All right, got my mic on. I forget now I'm producing and hosting, so I'm not quite seasoned with my technical abilities yet, but yeah, so they beat Kansas State. That Kansas State team went on to play in the Sugar Bowl. That was a good win for an 8-5 Texas team that then, season didn't go as planned. They, kind of floundered at the end there against Washington, ending their season in the Alamo Bowl with a loss to Washington and Michael Penix and those guys. But yeah, I mean, Texas, all in all, that was a pretty big win for Sark. That was, his first road ranked win, I want to say. That was year 2, of course. But, yeah, at Kansas State in 2022, those games you kind of forget. I liked at Iowa State last year. I think it was a big one. But, yeah, so for number 4 is the 4th best game of Steve Sarkisian's coaching career at Texas. It's got to be the Big 12 championship game for me. And now you might think it should be a little higher on the list, but that Oklahoma State team was not exactly a competitive opponent for Texas. Texas quickly dispatched them. Quinn Ewers broke all sorts of Big 12 records. If you guys remember, throwing for 450 yards. Texas had 33 first downs in that game. Yeah, that was 49-21, an absolute trouncing. But that was a ranked matchup, and that was the first Big 12 title since 2009. That was a huge game. That was a huge, kind of a turn point. Maybe not that exact game, but that was a, big sort of symbolic win. Like, all right, Texas is in the playoff, right? It's finally happened. All the years, of being down from the new playoff era where Texas wasn't a serious competitor. the playoffs started in 2014-15, and it took them 9 years to get in, right? And maybe that wasn't the biggest win, beating a 10-4 Oklahoma State team, but winning the Big 12 in the last year as well. Quinn Ewers having the game that he had, Adonai Mitchell, haven't said his name in a while. A.D. Mitchell going off in that game, as well as J.T. Sanders. Missed those guys. Missed J.T. Sanders. We missed JT not as much as Gunnar Helm really stepped up, but A.D. Mitchell, it would have been nice to have him this year. But that was a symbolic win, I think, for Texas, and Coach Sarkisian being able to win the Big 12 title was huge for the Longhorns, obviously, and go into the playoff, their first one. And, obviously that led to back-to-back years, but that was just a huge win. And then obviously the moment of, Quinn Ewers getting the WWE belt, Big 12 partnering up with that, and Texas being able to leave the Big 12 with a win. When people said they weren't good enough for the SEC, because you remember they were 5-7 when it got announced they were going to the SEC. So people thought they wouldn't be able to compete and all that. But that was a huge win, winning the Big 12. Obviously, beating Oklahoma State might have not been the best win in the Big 12 title. People thought it would be a rematch with OU. Didn't get that, unfortunately. Instead, you got their little brother. And, Texas sunned them for sure. 452 from Quinn Ewers, 4 TDs for him. That was just an offensive obliteration, just a fireworks show for Texas. That was a fun game to watch. T'Vondre Sweat caught a touchdown. Yeah, that was a huge win for Sark and the program. And, yeah, I'd put the Big 12 championship win at number 4. Yeah, as I said, I'm not great at producing yet. I should have put up banners for what my rankings are. But at number 3, let's put up an impromptu banner for you guys. Here we go. Number 3, I've got the win over Arizona State. That is technically a top 10 win. Arizona State finished the season. Look at that. Number 3, the Peach Bowl. That is Sark's third best win at Texas, in my opinion, beating number 7 Arizona State, and 11-3 Arizona State. And Arizona State, who probably did not get their credit from you or the nation alike until, we saw what Cam Scatterbo and Sam Leavitt were capable of, right? And, like that Arizona State team was incredibly competitive. And if you followed Arizona State at all, which, I don't consider myself a casual, so I follow Arizona State football. I still followed the Big 12, even though Texas was gone. I loved watching Scatterbo and Sam Leavitt, and they, for the better part of their Big 12 schedule down the stretch, they just absolutely dog walked a lot of people, just skull drug them. They were beating teams to a pulp in the Big 12 down the stretch. They destroyed Iowa State in the Big 12 title. So they were a lot better than people give them credit. And like I said, 11-3, they finished the season ranked number 7. So that was a top 10 win. And, we talked about in the last episode, those have been kind of hard to come by for Coach Sark, those top 10 wins. But, hey, you'll get them where you can take them. And I think also the fact that in the 12-team playoff, while they had gone to the semifinals last year, the fact that they went back and they were pressured in that game. They were really pressured. That showed resilience, determination, and then they went and ended up playing a really competitive game against Ohio State. Excuse me, gonna get a drink of water here from an unnamed cup. They're not a sponsor, so we will not show the name of that cup, but I'm sure you could guess it. But back to what I was saying, right? They were able to take care of Arizona State in what was really a nerve-wracking game, I'm sure, for a lot of you. And if you remember when Quinn threw that huge 4th and 13 touchdown that we'll probably remember for years to come, even though this didn't end up being a national title team. But that was a huge throw by Quinn Ewers, right? And the look on his face of just kind of, not even relief. It was more like this. He threw that touchdown pass, huge play. He wasn't amped at all. It looked like he'd seen a ghost because he probably realized he had a little bit of tough going with the media and the injuries and the fans this year. It wasn't, all the praise that maybe he was used to when he first came to Austin, right? And so Quinn kind of just had a sigh of, he could breathe. Not even a sigh of relief, but he just felt like he could breathe and go back to Austin after that. He pulled off that win, right? But because, it was a game they expected to win. They were gut punched a little bit. That was, a tough game down to the wire. a stressful game. And if Texas had lost, Sark and Quinn alike would have, been ran through the mud by the media, by the fans. So that was a huge win, in my opinion, because they showed resilience. The defense and the defense, they were really put on their heels. They were on the field for 100+ plays. Texas couldn't run the ball, if you remember, in the Peach Bowl. I mean, it was only a month ago, but they couldn't run the ball. There wasn't much production aside from Matthew Golden in the receiving game. So, like, that was really a legacy game for, like, Quinn Ewers and a great game for Sark as well. Like, the offense looked good aside from the run game. If you remember, like, they had a couple great drives, and then they had great drives in overtime when they needed to. They just stalled out, and then they were missing field goals, right? So, but for Coach Sark to, win the Peach Bowl, his first major bowl win, technically at Texas was the Peach Bowl. That's not a bad one to start out with. I know all the New Year's Six Bowls are now playoff games. It's a weird era of college football, to say the least. But yeah, for him to be able to beat a top 10 team, Big 12 conference champion, an 11-3 team, and probably a team that was not given their due respect. That was, they were much better than Boise State, for example. That was not like when Penn State got to beat up on Boise. I think Arizona State was a seriously competitive team, and Scadaboo, one of the best single game performances you'll ever see. So for Texas and Sarkisian alike to gut that win out, that was a huge win in my opinion. So I put that one at number 3. And so now at number 2, let's go ahead and we're just making banners on the fly. This is an independent production at this point. We're going to go ahead and throw this one up here. I think who number 2 will probably be. Number 1, I think everybody agrees with. There we go. I don't want to give these guys their due, but here's number 2. The number 2 biggest win for Sark, Texas A&M. Now I know, little old Texas A&M, you hate to give little brother too much credit, right? But Texas A&M at Texas A&M, right? The first time you play them in 13 years, they talking all this smack. They went to the SEC. They started out hot, went 11-2 with Johnny Manziel. And all Texas fans and A&M fans were able to do for 12 years, 13 years, from 2011 to 2024 was talk about recruiting rankings. They played maybe once in basketball in 2019, if my memory serves me correctly. But they did not play in football. There was a lot of talk of people are scared of one another. Texas is scared of Texas A&M. But, hey, they finally played, and Sark walks in there and absolutely manhandles A&M. A&M couldn't run the ball. Marcel Reed couldn't do anything. They totally contained the quarterback run. He had 150 yards passing or something like that. They outgained A&M by 200 yards. That was good old-fashioned, drag them behind the shed, beat them in a dust brawl, just beat them up, and they walk away, and A&M's sitting there, with the stars around their head and an old Disney cartoon, wondering what the hell just happened to us, because they thought they were physical. Mike Elko called them the flagship program of Texas. He learned very soon that flagship players stay in Austin when they are Texas grown, and the best out-of-state players, if they come to Texas, typically go to Austin. And they absolutely manhandled them. That was really cool to see. Trey Wisner running for 169 yards. The first drive script was great. Or was it the first or second drive? The first scoring drive. The last month and a half of the season's a blur. Remind me in the comments, but the first drive, I can't remember what they scored on. I don't think so. It might have been the second drive, but the first scoring drive, great script. Quinn looked really good to start. You remember he was a little gimpy, but once he broke that run, he looked good. And Arch settled him in. Oh man. Settled him in when he got that rushing touchdown, right? And then Quinn was able to kind of calm down, realize he was fine because he was coming off that ankle injury. The offensive play calling in that game was elite. A&M couldn't stop anything. They couldn't really get a pass rush on them. Their secondary was getting gutted. There was a couple deep balls. We didn't see many of those this year, but a couple deep balls. I think Wingo had one, if I remember right. Wingo had a deep ball, and Matthew Golden might have had a deep ball. But then, Texas probably should have beat them 31-0, right? They didn't give up a single offensive point. A&M could not get an inch on Texas, except for then we remember what happened in the second half. But great scripted drives coming out of the second half. Sark, one of his best coach games. It kind of felt like when he went into Bryant-Denny Stadium, going into Kyle Field. And you remember A&M's playing power. I can't sing it because they'll probably copyright strike us for the song. But A&M's getting so hyped up, 100,000 strong. They're singing their fight song. That's all about Texas, mind you. And for those who don't know, like I went to Baylor, right? So I grew up here, but I didn't really realize how, A&M's entire fight song, it's a total different side note, but their entire fight song is about A&M or about Texas. It's all about sawing varsity's horns off, talking about Texas. You have to call them TU because it's such an own. And because if you remember, ESPN put up the lyrics, and that was the first time I had read the lyrics, that A&M's entire existence is basically based on Texas, which is quite funny. And then all amped up, it's their Super Bowl. What does A&M do? They lay a dud. Sark has a perfect game plan, but then unfortunately in the second half, Quinn got, hit from behind, wasn't quite paying attention, fumbled, and then the pick six, the next drive, back-to-back fails in the red zone, which was kind of the story of the season, the red zone being a problem. But yeah, that was a huge win for Texas. Like, that was really a statement win for Sark to just let them know, like, you're not here. You can have your fun. You had the SEC. Daddy's home. Belt's coming off. We all know what happened. BTA. We all know what happened, right? 17-0, pick six, whatever you want. It should have been 31-0, in my opinion. A&M could not move the ball. The run game was great. They ran it down their throats. All those big boys that A&M have was not enough. But, yeah, and then at number one, I think we all know who number one is. Let's see if I can like I said, guys, new to producing. Next time I make a list, I will have this up first. I mean, do I really even have to type this out? I think you guys all know what the best game of Sark's coaching career at Texas, probably coaching career in general. Shocker, Alabama, when he went at Bryant-Denny Stadium and handed Saban his first loss at home since 2019 against Joe Burrow. That was a huge win for Quinn Ewers. Sorry, guys. Cedar in Austin is bad. Another drink from an unlisted cup. I will not show their brand until they sponsor us. Maybe they will because they're friends with our sponsors, Academy. But number one, Alabama, right? They walk in there. They beat Saban at home. He beats Saban in his second go-around, which we know with assistants they do not do. He joins Kirby and Jimbo, of all people. We were just talking about A&M beating their former the apprentice beating the master, the sensei Saban. And yeah, Sark was able to walk in there. And I think that game was just, as much as I talked about the Big 12 one being kind of symbolic, that one, not as much, that was emphatic, but also symbolic of like, oh, Texas is actually back. Forget Joe Tessitore announcing that when they beat, when Tyrone Swoops did the 18-wheeler package and dove in the end zone against Notre Dame. Texas is actually back. They can walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium, beat them there like Joe Burrow's LSU did, and kind of manhandle them a little bit. They scored 10 in the second quarter and 21 in the fourth. The fact that they put up a 21-point fourth quarter to close the game, because they kind of let Bama get back in there because they were up early, right? And then they kind of let Bama get back in the game. So that was huge, the way they closed that game out. And then, that was one of the best game plans I've seen, the opening script. The first scoring drive, Quinn Ewers just absolutely dialed it up and was able to hit his receivers. It helps having Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. But, yeah, that was a great game plan and probably the best game of Quinn's career. I know statistically the one against Oklahoma State was, but as I said, Oklahoma State, playing against Caleb Downs at Alabama and playing against Oklahoma State, all due respect to the Pokes and the mullet man himself, Mike Gundy, a little different caliber. And also one of them was in Bryant-Denny Stadium with 100,000 fans hating you. And they walked in there and silenced them. And Texas, of all teams, right before they come to the SEC, walking in there, showing them that we are back, slamming their fist on the table and saying we can do what you do, but better. And the way they did that perfectly was when they ran it down their throats 7 runs in a row on the final drive to run the clock out, and Alabama couldn't do anything. And that game was kind of emblematic of the greater shift of Texas, as I talked about on the last show, like with Sark recruiting 5-star linemen finally, like we haven't seen since Mac Brown, getting DJ Campbell, getting Kelvin Banks. just having a great line and being able to push guys around. And they pushed Alabama around. It looked like Texas was what you thought Alabama was in that game, right? Alabama's an 11-point favorite. Texas the year before showed they had the athletes to compete with them, and they probably should have beat them. But if they should have, they would have. I know. But before Quinn Ewers got hurt, right? And so that was just a huge game, going in as the underdog and acting like the big dog. Ultimately, I couldn't think of a better way to say that, as cringy as it is. But they big dogged them. They big dogged them a little bit. They ran down their throat. They outgained them. It really was just like a solid, complete game. They forced some turnovers. That was a really good game for Texas, and I think the number one win in Sarkisian's career at UT, and probably his only big time win. Now, Arizona State's a top 10 win, but people talk about like Ryan Day before this national title in top 5 games, and James Franklin in top 5 games. That was Sark's, like, that's his one he can hang his hat on for now. But now, hey, walk into Columbus this fall. Let's make this a regular occurrence, similar to what Saban was doing at Alabama, similar to, Kirby, for the most part, has a good track record on the road against everybody not named Alabama. But, that was a huge game for Coach Sark and the program, and was also just a fun game to watch nationally because everybody hates Texas, whether you're from the state or not. The South hates Texas because they were coming to the SEC, and people outside the state hate Texas because, Texas is kind of the Cowboys of college football to a lot of people, biggest brand. And to watch them walk in there and be able to back up their talk and come in under the radar, and Texas is actually underrated in that game. That was, fun to see. But hey, guys, call in. Feel free to click the link in the chat. Call into the show and let us know what your favorite games were or what your best memories are of Texas and Sarkisian era so far, what you've liked seeing. We're gonna go ahead and bring in our first caller, a regular. He's been on the last couple shows. Jackson, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, James? How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Pretty good.
What do you think about that list, and what are some of your favorite games from the Sarkisian era thus far?
Yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty good list. Obviously, the Bama game tops it all. That put Texas on the map, got the whole fan base excited to a different level. One game that I don't know if it's top 5, but always kind of stood out to me was Sark's second year, the Kansas State game.
Oh, I put that on at number 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There had been a series of games before that where Texas would be up 28-10 at halftime, and then they would score 3 points in the second half and lose the game. And I want to say the score at halftime was like 31-3 or something. It was a pretty good blowout, and Kansas State did mount a comeback, but we were able to finally take care of business. And I just remember that was a really, because the season, we knew we weren't making the playoffs. So I remember that that win just felt great.
Yeah, I actually know exactly what you're talking about. In 2021, when they started 4-1 and Red River, they famously blew that 28-7 lead, but then they proceeded, people forget, to blow leads against Oklahoma State, Baylor, I want to say Kansas State again. So that was a massive win, because I remember actually when you refreshed my memory, I totally forgot that they were up in that game, and then Kansas State crawled back with I don't remember if it was Will Howard or Skylar Thompson playing quarterback at the time, but that was just a big game for winning on the road, because Quinn had struggled at Oklahoma State that year, and just kind of like a stepping stone game.
I mean, they ended up being the Big 12 champs that year too. So
yeah, they were Sugar Bowl team. They beat Max Duggan and TCU. Yeah. So that was a huge game. Just the road win, and I think the confidence of Texas crawling back, because people forget, I don't know if they forget. I think a lot of them remember that recently, people kind of just are thinking SEC. But Texas fans should remember that Iowa State and Kansas State and Oklahoma State, those games were not gimmies for about 5 years there. So, I mean, wins like that maybe fly under the national radar were significant, being able to elevate back up to that level because Oklahoma was doing what they were supposed to do, right?
Right.
For 5 straight years, they won the conference, it seems like. But Texas was, Texas and Oklahoma, they were 1A, 1B, right? And those were the two teams that everybody wanted, like the SEC wanted to bring into their conference because they're the biggest moneymakers, they're the biggest recruiters, best facilities. You all know that, right? But Oklahoma was living up to that billing, and Texas for years was just underachieving, getting beat by less talented teams, whether it's TCU, Baylor, you name it. So that was a nice one because that was a good Kansas State team. And like you said, they did not blow the lead. They half did, and then they were able to finish. And while that season maybe didn't finish like people thought, you have to have one of those years when you're going from 5-7 to 12 wins to 13 wins. You're not going to typically jump from 5-7 to 12, 13 wins. It's stepping stone year, the 8-5 season. They were competitive again. They blew out OU. That was all in all like a pretty good season to show they were trending in the right direction.
Yeah. The other game, this isn't from the Sark era, but 2018 Red River, I just remember just for my childhood, I guess, that was just the first, watching Texas since I was 3 years old, probably the worst time to start watching Texas football. And I just remember that 2018 OU game was just the first glimmer of hope that something could be building. And I think that was the second year we lost to Maryland, but we were on a 4-game win streak with back-to-back ranked wins against TCU and USC. And then OU is top 7. And we ended up winning the Sugar Bowl that year. And we did have three more years of derailed seasons. I just remember that just being the first glimmer of hope.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah.
That Sugar Bowl. Of course, I remember Westlake great. Sam's win against OU was great because Kyler Murray, I remember he didn't know how to lose, and that was really funny. Funny seeing him not want to shake hands afterwards. But that is a very good point. It's off season. We might as well run it back to 2018 and just reminisce. But that win against Red River when it really felt like Texas had taken a backseat to OU. And like you said, I think about that all the time. That team, they went 10-4, but the fact that they lost to Maryland, there was a couple games where you're
I was at that Maryland game too. And
I forget you.
We totally should have won that if there was a rain delay that game, right as Texas was gaining momentum. And we totally would have won that if there was no rain delay. But I think that year as well, we were up by 5 against West Virginia, I want to say, and we fumbled.
Will Greer.
We fumbled on their one, and they came back and won it. That was also a brutal loss. That team that could have been a 12-2 team.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times we talk about some of the guys I work with. Obviously, they've been doing this for years, and they're if Malik Jefferson had came back and Deshaun Elliott, that 2018 team was it was a slim glimmer of hope. And then, it didn't end up working out for Tom Herman, but a lot of those guys, and a lot of those guys got to be a part of a couple of the first Sark teams.
Secondary, that 2018 secondary was one of the best. Still rivals our secondary today. I think 3 NFL starters.
You mean 2017 or 20? Maybe
it was 17, but I thought
Deshaun wasn't back for 2018. Deshaun Elliott.
Oh, and I can't remember. There were 2 guys that both went in the first 4 rounds, and I remember because that same year, our entire secondary was suspended for the first quarter against Oklahoma State, and we went down 24-0, and we ended up we almost came back, but
but 2018, it's I feel like Sam and those guys were a bridge to 2022 or 23. More so, it's a lot of people remember them beating Georgia, and that era of people were in high school. They started to come back up, and it felt like Texas kind of needed one of those years because I always worried and would talk with my friends because every year, you know how Texas fans are. It'd be oh, this is the year. Yeah. And when you don't pop off a 10-win season for the better part of a decade, people start to forget that Texas was a national power, a prominent contender. And so I think 2018, beating Georgia, regardless of, Georgia having guys sitting out and whatnot, was just such a huge win. And then them coming into the season top 10, even though 2019 didn't go as planned with injuries and whatnot, they still competed with that elite LSU team. And I think it just it gave Texas some more years for growth. Whereas, because I remember people being like wondering if Sark would take this job because it didn't seem like it was a good spot because you had failed with back-to-back coaches. So, I mean, I think a lot of those guys we forget about. Hey, but DeMarvion Overshown was on that. He was on that team, and he got to play with Sark for a little bit. So, just a lot of those guys. Those are some great games that people forget about. And 2018 Red River was an absolute classic. Just Sam taking over. That was 2018. Just Sellinger just truck sticking people and
that was one of the most impressive games I saw from him. Like he was running over linebackers. I think he had 5 total touchdowns. That game was awesome. And like OU almost came back, and then like the famous Gus Johnson call with Dicker.
Dicker the kicker. And I mean that was their first time even appearing in a Big 12 title until 2023. So that was huge. Wasn't Sark's win. You got any thoughts on A&M or any other games?
Yeah, I think the A&M one definitely a huge one. Because at the end of the day, they didn't A&M fans like they didn't care how bad they were. Like they were looking forward to this game all year, as were we. Like it was awesome to bring the rivalry back. I was in College Station for the game, but I wasn't at the game. A couple of my buddies were though, and the experience was pretty. We got a pretty bad reception there. Like they were pretty hateful down in College Station. But I think
they were nice guys. I thought they pride themselves on being nice.
Yeah, but I do think that was a landmark win for Sark because if you he's still. I mean, now he's got the extension. He's pretty locked in. But if Sark were to lose that game, then I think a lot of Texas fans would have started to grow a little restless, just because of the importance of that game.
Yeah, that would have been one of those where it'd be bad if he had lost. I had Arizona State on the list as well, and that was another one. Like, because the standard is so high, and like you're making $10 million a year. Those are also games like if he had lost, it would have been like, no one's ever talking hot seat with a guy like that. But it would be, hey, the expectation is we're here, we want to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, he's had a few. He'll obviously have several opportunities next year. If he goes into the shoe and wins, even going into the swamp, Florida will probably be a much more competitive team. And then Stanford Stadium, if he can win either in Columbus or in Athens, like both of those could be 2 or 1A, 1B with Bama.
Yeah, I mean those 3 games are 3 games that me and my buddies have been highlighting. Especially this year, the road schedule is going to be a lot tougher, but I think it's also going to be a lot more fun. We're going to get some great experiences to see these SEC stadiums. But yeah, those 3 games are definitely going to be the biggest test for Sark.
Yeah, and you'll finally get that real SEC experience.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that an Earl Campbell jersey on your wall?
That is. And then Ricky's on the other side.
Yeah, we just did a video on the social media for Academy, of Friends at Academy. I was giving out the gift cards, and I was asking people who are Texas's 2 Heisman winners, and
oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
just one kid got it right, and he barely got it right.
Yeah, these jerseys, my grandma, she tries to collect every star that comes through Texas and get their jersey signed. She still lives in Austin, so she's been really pushing for me to try to get Quinn and Arch to sign a jersey so she can get those framed. Haven't gotten the chance yet, though.
Hey, next press conference in the fall, I'll try and work that one for you. But, guys, speaking of that video, make sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Inside Texas. We're on Twitter as well at Inside Texas. We're growing a lot. We put out fun little videos like that. Asking people trivia, doing some man on the street stuff, interacting with the fans. Make sure to give us a follow on social media. Jackson, thanks for joining again. Love the jerseys, man. Appreciate you calling in.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you have a good one. All right, we're gonna bring in our next caller here. Another regular. Gerald?
Yeah.
Gerald, you're on the horn. What do you
Can you
think
hear me?
about what do you think about Sark's top 5 wins? Any thoughts?
Wait, hold on. I'm trying to make sure. Sometimes it's finicky where I'm at. Can you hear me? All
Yeah,
right.
we can hear you.
Will you remind me of the list real quick?
Yeah, so I got to work on my graphic game now that I'm producing too. But so I did 5 Kansas State on the road in 2022. Then we had the Big 12 championship where they blew out Oklahoma State,
Okay.
winning the Peach Bowl at A&M, and then of course at Bama and beating Saban.
Yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's kind of hard. His first year that was rough. Didn't really have a whole lot of opportunities to get like a marquee win there. Obviously, since moving into the SEC, you're going to get those chances to get kind of some of those big wins against some of the, not to say I love the Big 12 personally this year. I think it was a lot of fun to watch, but some of those more serious wins like A&M, Alabama, like you're talking about. I think next year, like what you just alluded to, is really when we're going to see if we can get one of those big ones. Samford obviously would be huge. That place as of recent last couple of years, where it's been a bit like walking into a death trap for a lot of teams. Not an easy place to play. I have no idea when Texas plays LSU, but obviously, like places like that, those are always, even if the team's not, doing super super well, it's a tough place to play. But I kind of want to ask you that next year. I know the last guy that just called in was talking about Sanford, Florida, and then I forgot the other one.
At Ohio State.
Okay, yeah. What would you think? Like, would you be very disappointed if Texas goes 1-2 in those 3 games?
Honestly,
Or does it kind of depend if they go 1-2, who that one win is?
Yeah, because if that one wins at Florida and Florida's an 8-5 team again, not ideal. But you would like to, more importantly, see them win one of those games at Ohio State or at Georgia, because at Georgia and Ohio State, they're both kind of in flux, similar to like Texas right now, right? Gunnar Stockton is maybe the quarterback. They've got another kid they're high on behind him, and then Julian Sayin at Ohio State, but it's unproven. Like they've got a lot of turnover in these rosters, so I think it's sort of like, all right, who's developing better? Who's actually got better talent back? Because it's all unproven guys for a lot of these position groups for Texas and Ohio State next year, as well as Georgia. So those are the major wins because of where Florida's been in recent years. Unless Florida does pop next year, you've got to hope they split those games at Ohio State and at Georgia, in my opinion, to feel happy about Sark in big games next year.
Yeah. Do you think 3-0, obviously, like it's possible, anything can happen. Do you think if you had to give a percentage wise, how likely is 3-0? And then if you go 2-1, like should Texas as a fan base be shooting like, let's go 2-1 in these 3 games. It's going to be very difficult to win all 3. If we do go 2-1 with these 3, nobody should be in panic mode. We should actually be pretty happy with that result. Like, what do you think?
I mean, there's a reason prop bets pay out so heavily. To bet that they're going to go 3-0, I don't think is likely. You're talking about 3 tough road games. Nothing they played this year is comparable. Playing at A&M is the only one, and I'd say that's closer to like going into the swamp. I think you're probably looking at a Florida team that's similar to this year's A&M team. A good but not elite team. Going into Athens, as you said, it's been an absolute buzzsaw for teams. I can't remember the last time someone went in there and won. I want to think it has to have been Bama, right? In 2020, I want to think, but going off of memory, but at Ohio State also, unless you're Michigan, you don't win there. Unless you're Michigan, unless you're an 8-5 Michigan team, you don't win at Ohio State. But yeah, I mean, I think my opinion on that is that it's kind of a different level. And to think that all 3 is going to hit when Texas has so many unknowns. I mean, if Texas could go 1-2 in those and and they go 10-2, and those are their only 2 losses, that's a playoff team. That's a good season, because you're also talking
I
about
don't think
CJ
Texas
Baxter.
fans have anything to complain about if they
Yeah,
go 1-2.
because the
and
first
10
year of
wins.
Arch, Wingo's on. How will Wingo be a star? Will DeAndre Moore be a star? Khalil Lockett, Jamie French,
Yeah,
these
I wasn't
freshmen.
even thinking really about that. Like putting that much pressure to go 3-0, even 2-1 on a first year starter, even Sark's knocking it out of the park. Like that's a ton of pressure to put on a guy. So I mean, yeah, if you go 2-1 in those games, and like what you were kind of saying, like even 1-2, and that one win is in the shoe or in Sanford, like I think the Texas fan base should be pretty happy with that result and shouldn't be, super fired up at that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you can't expect so much turnover, especially offensive line, defensive line, your secondary, aside from Michael Taft, like all of your leaders in the secondary. Now, you've got a lot of talent back. Obviously, it's Texas. You've got Colin Simmons, Trey Moore. You got the defense should be still elite, I would imagine. But the offense, like, what if they don't have their chemistry right on August 30th and they're walking into the shoe in a night game, and that's how Arch starts his career, and maybe he has a good but not great game, they lose, right? So, I mean, I think when you've got new offensive line and how offensive lines become elite in a Joe Moore Award competitive, group of finalists
That takes
like this year.
time.
Yeah, time. That's why, you see with teams like Ole Miss, when you transfer in or portal in a line, they don't congeal. There's a vocab word of the day. They don't congeal.
No,
I know you're an Ole Miss guy.
I totally agree with you there.
I know you're an Ole Miss guy, but when you bring in portal linemen, it's the reason Calvin Banks, Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, and Cam Williams. Well, Cam Williams shifted in, but he had been in the program for 3 years. He started for the first time this year, but you have continuity between at least 3 guys in that group. It's a good, it's typically a good sign that you're going to have a competitive O-line for that season.
You can get away with the portal stuff, receivers, running backs, all the kind of flash, DBs, even, D linemen sort of thing. Really every position other than O-line. You could go portal crazy, but you got to hit O-line.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's
get
why
them together as a unit. But yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. Always a good time, Gerald.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, guys, that was our record for longest segment of this show. I think we're on episode 10. So maybe that record will be broken. Also, happy 10 show anniversary. Thanks if you watched the first one and are still here. So yeah, I guess now I have to work towards an ad, but I can't think of a clever way to get to it. I guess I need to remodel how I do my lists and learn to have better graphics. So I need to remodel my graphic ability and my producing ability, and you need to remodel your kitchen.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
All right. Thank you, LC. Again, shout out to our only sponsors. So please break a kitchen cabinet for me, will you? Destroy a drawer. Make your mom or wife or girlfriend mad. Or your landlord if you live in an apartment. Just break something in your kitchen and then call Luxe because, you've got an outdated style. You need to revamp your kitchen. They're my only sponsors, so I respect them and I will promote them until I'm in the ground. But all right, guys. So next, we've got to talk about Blake Gideon left. So Blake Gideon leaving the program. If I had said this a year ago, you'd probably be happy and think, good riddance. That secondary got gutted against Washington. They got cut open And they were in the 90s in pass defense last year. But no, Blake Gideon leaving in 2025 is a bad thing because he turned around the Texas secondary, him and Terry Joseph alike, turned around the secondary and made it one of the best in the country, if not the best. They were number one in yards per attempt. They were number one in yards per completion as well. That's the same stat. Oh, wait, no, that's a different stat. Yards per attempt and completion. They're number one in both. Kind of similar. But the Texas secondary was elite this year, right? What a turnover by Blake Gideon. He took them from being in the 90s to the number one secondary in the country, pretty much. They were top 5 in like everything. Great DB room this year, and it's kind of cool to see Gideon, being a guy from the DBU of old, the 2000s, being a part of that team with Earl Thomas and the like, and being in the national championship run team, to kind of bridge that to now and work with secondaries like Taff and Makuba and Jade. So it was awesome to see what Gideon did. The question is, where will Texas go from here? He's going to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. Not a bad gig. Brant Key's got a good thing, or Brant Pry. I always confuse him with the guy. No, he's Brant Key. Brant Pry's the guy at Virginia Tech. I know what they look like. Brant Key, the Georgia Tech guy, has all the bracelets. Brant Pry, he's got a whole beard thing going on. But yeah, so he's going to play for or coach for Brant Key at Georgia Tech. He did a good job. Shout out to him. He got a lot of flack after last season against Washington, rightfully so, and the season before against Washington. But he turned it around, had a great season, and he's cashing in while he can. Like, that's a huge jump for him. He's a Texas X. You got to root for him. He was part of the first team I really followed for the Longhorns, being a part of that 08 and 09 run. So he really cool to see. Good for Blake Gideon. Where will Texas go from here? Terry Joseph has done a great job as the corners coach. I'm sure they will be fine. That's kind of the first chink in the armor of Texas's staffing. Sark's got a really talented staff and hasn't really had a ton of movement. So this will be the first thing where you're kind of keeping your eyes on it. And, obviously come to InsideTexas.com for all those updates. We'll be the first to let you know when we decide who is going to be the new secondaries coach. Up next, guys, I want to talk about the spring game. No spring game? ? That's what I wrote down on this paper right here. No spring game. I don't know if you saw, the great Ian Boyd wrote an article on Inside Texas talking about Texas is considering not having a spring game. How weird is that? Thank you, college football 2025, 12-team playoffs, mega conferences. Now we cannot even get spring games, maybe. Nebraska, if you did not see our old friends, the Big Red, our old Big 8, Big 12. Our old Big 12, just Big 12 rival and foe, former Big 12 member, Nebraska, the Big Red, decided to get rid of their spring game. And that's like a big event up there because I don't know if you've been to Nebraska. It's inland and they have no water. They just have a lot of corn. And they got 90,000 people to show up to a volleyball game in a football stadium. So their spring game is also huge. They get about 50, 60,000 people. But Matt Rule came out and said that people were poaching his players because, we have tampering and all that fun stuff now in college football. And so people were tampering and watching spring game and go, oh, who's that kid? Because this is how a lot of spring games go. You don't really know how good a kid is. And the kid might not even know how good he is. He might not even be that good. But, the spring game, you'll get a second string slot receiver in, right? And then the coaches don't want to tell him, oh, you're so great. You're so great. They want to keep him. Player retention is huge, right? They will keep a player who could start at an FAU or, a USF. I don't know why I'm only thinking Florida schools, Texas State, right? Or maybe even Texas Tech. But they'll keep them here because they don't want them to leave. They want depth. You obviously want roster depth. You're looking out for the kids, but you're also, you're thinking about your team and your program. And it's better if you have, a second good slot receiver who could play in a moment's notice, right? So Nebraska basically ended their spring game and they're going to go private, I guess, or keep it low key. It's going to be off the books. Basically, they will not have a spring game for the public because what happens is, I guess, in this lovely era of football is now that we have no restrictions on the transfer portal, people will come and poach their players. So they'll go and they'll say, oh, this little slot's kind of good. Hey, buddy, why don't you come over here for 50 grand from the local Chevrolet in Birmingham and come play at UAB? Or maybe it's an actual competitive school, right? But yeah, so that's kind of a problem, obviously. So Texas is now talking about going to like more of an NFL style OTA type of thing where like people can't scout your workouts and you just have private workouts, right? So there's no tampering. You can't really see how great this kid is and then try and tempt him to come over here. Oh, you'll start if you come over here. It is really annoying. It is. It's a weird time for everyone. There's no rules. I can't think of a better description other than say Wild West, which you've heard probably a million times from everywhere you get college football news. But it is the Wild West. It is the land of no law in college football currently because you can just go to a spring game. There goes my light, guys. I mean, I'm just so unprofessional. Here's why I'm sitting in an egg chair in my little brother's room broadcasting this show. But let's get that light back on, huh? I'm a producer and technical difficulties. They're all on me nowadays. No Texas Homer helping me out today. But so back to what I was saying is, yeah, it's just a weird land of college football, weird landscape, right? Can you blame the teams? I mean, I want to go to the spring game, hang out with the great Justin Wells and Charlie and those boys and Joe and everyone. It's fun to see them, right? It's fun to see them. It's fun to hang out. It kind of feels like a baseball game almost. You're out in the sun. Feels like you're at a ballpark. It's not too hot. I mean, I don't know if you guys are out of state, but I'm from Austin, right? And I love March and April and like honestly February right now. It's like 70 degrees and breezy. I feel like I'm out in California because this is the best weather to be outside. Unfortunately, when we have our first home game on September 6th, it'll probably be 100 degrees. So get ready for the heat blisters. My little brother, unfortunately, is even pastier than me, if you can believe that. And he goes to UT. And his first game against Alabama, 2022, he got a heat blister sunburn right on his chest because that is Texas football. That's what it's all about, baby. Out in the sun. I played Pop Warner as a kid. We were running gassers up a hill. It's 110 degrees, and you were not allowed to have water until you finished. But that is the Westlake standard, baby. That's why we're three-time state champions, or actually 4. I didn't play football, though. But, yeah, it's nice weather. I love spring games because it's just fun to, like, see. It's semi-competitive, right? You watch the highlights. You go, oh, Arch Manning, what did he go off for, 350 last spring game? That was a big deal. I mean, I love it. I run the social media. I'll make a graphic for that if he goes off in this spring game. But, like, spring games are a fun experience. The fans get to come out. They kind of see how the roster's shaking up and who are the new players. And it connects the community. We don't get enough community these days because we're always talking to each other through these. And it's fun to get out as a fan base and actually get to see your team, get to see other Texas fans in the spring because we have a void. You got a football-shaped void in your heart during the offseason because we know none of you care about basketball. We don't talk about basketball for a reason. I like basketball, but hey, I'll talk about it when they're ranked. That is my rule that I made up because it is my show. I will talk about Texas basketball when they're ranked or when they're in March Madness, which they should be. But in the offseason, maybe you like baseball, but it's nice to get a little football. It's a little palate cleanser before the summer because there's no real sports in the summer. Don't tell me you watch regular season MLB games because you don't. As an Astros fan, even I don't, and they've been really good. But you need something. You need a little football in you. You need a little taste, just a little something to quench your addiction. You got to watch some spring ball. It's fun. ESPN does coverage. Longhorn Network used to do the coverage, but you watch the highlights. You see who's going to step up next year. You predict. You think some guy pops off you've never seen. He's starting somehow. What? Oh, he's starting the spring game. It's fun. It's fun, and it's like low key. Coaches are out on the field. It's all in all a good event. I would love to go. So I hope they don't cancel it. But if they do, I kind of see why they would cancel it, right? Because you're a loaded roster like Texas. These mid-tier teams are going to come in and they're going to want to say, oh, hey, kid, whether it's a backup receiver, right? Whether it's, D-line, where it's linebackers. Oh, you're behind Anthony Hill. You're behind Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, whatever. Hey, buddy, why don't you come over here? Why don't you come see what it's like to start? And you can come start at a team in the American or, Big 12 now. No offense to our former brethren in the Big 12, but it's a lower tier conference now. So, a guy who can't start at Texas can start at Arizona State, as we've seen, but doesn't mean they're not good. But yeah, guys, I mean, I'm curious what y'all think. Comment if you want to call in and talk about the spring game. It is just weird. It'd be sad. Like if Texas didn't have a spring game, I'd be kind of sad because it's just another thing they're changing about college football, the sport you loved growing up, the thing that just gives you nostalgia and that twinge in your heart for why you love it is because, you know, you feel like a kid again when you watch college football. I mean, Saturdays to me, Saturday mornings, it's like Christmas every freaking weekend for me personally. I don't know how you all are, but I watch games from 11 to 11 and then even later because I'll watch the West Coast games, right? So it is sad to see them just kind of, they keep dinging at it. They're dinging at it. They're knocking a little off. They're chipping off. Oh, here's the SEC is now 16 teams. The Big Ten is all across the coast. A 12-team playoff. And then now teams, I mean, the way this stuff kind of works, though, guys, is Nebraska will probably be the first to do it. And then in 5 years, like none of the major programs will do it because Nebraska is a huge program. And for them to not have a spring game is a shame. It is sad. I hope Texas has one this year, guys. But yeah, we'll see. Let us know what you think in the comments. Call in if you want to talk about the spring game. That is what we do in the offseason. We talk about the possibility of there not being a spring game, but we will do it anyways because this job is better than anything else we could be doing. What else would I be doing? Breaking down Texas and Arkansas basketball? I don't think anybody wants that. So, last thing. I said I would talk about it last show. If you watched, I don't know what our retention rate is. We're 10 episodes in. Half of you probably don't even know who I am. But if you watched the last show, I said I would talk about Jahdae Barron getting inducted into the Thorpe Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, I believe, the Jim Thorpe Award. And I didn't because if you can't tell, we're almost at an hour here. I like to talk. I'm literally just talking into a void right now. I don't know who's listening. If you are listening, if you just got this on and you're making dinner and you don't even know what the hell I'm saying, I just talk. I'll keep talking anyways, whether you're listening or not. But now I said I would talk about it. We're going to talk about Jahdae getting into the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame because how funny is that a Texas player got to drive up to Oklahoma and be inducted into the Jim Thorpe Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame? I don't know if that's right. It's something like that. It's an Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. I thought I had to burp. I do not. But if you didn't see that, he gave a great speech. It was really cool. I think he went up there with Michael Huff, if I remember right. I think Michael Huff went up there with him. I saw some stuff about it. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about DBU and talk about Jahdae. What do you guys think about Jahdae? Where does Jahdae slot into DBU? So obviously, I made a little list here. I didn't see all these guys play. I'm a little bit of a younger guy, if you can't tell, but I put Quentin Jammer on there as I sort of just made a list. I think Earl Thomas is the best DB to ever play at Texas, and that's not just nostalgia because that was the first team I liked. That guy was an absolute freak. He had 10 INTs. Earl Thomas was a monster, was a beast in the NFL, was a Pro Bowler multiple times, and then because he got into some weird stuff in his personal life that we will not hash on here. You can look that up yourself. But he's no longer playing in the NFL. Unfortunately, he got out of the league, I think, before he was 30. But Earl Thomas was a specimen, hell of a player, probably the best DB I've ever seen play. And that's kind of why people call it DBU. And then, of course, Quentin Jammer, he had 57 pass breakups. He was a two-time All-Big 12 guy. Nathan Vasher, you can't forget him. 26 PBUs, 43 tackles, 6 INTs, and 5 TFLs in his best season. So I just wanted to look for fun for my own sake. So Vasher had 26 PBUs and 6 INTs in his best year. But the thing is with corners, you can't really look at stats. Like you got to kind of look at coverage grades maybe and like how many yards they give up. Corners, you really the less you hear about them in a game, the better they typically are, right? But Jahdae had 5 INTs, 11 PBUs, a sack, if you remember, against Arkansas. He got a sack, and he had 46 tackles. Aaron Ross I put on here because he obviously was a Thorpe Award winner. Quandre Diggs, 3-time All-Big 12 guy. And then Michael Huff, the original number 7. So those are kind of just like some of my favorites that I remember. When you look up like top lists, you'll see like the old dudes like Noble Das and, guys with nicknames like Swingin' or Bugger or, funny guys like the 30s and 40s and 50s were the funniest nicknames ever for players, be like Honest Tommy. And, they're on there statistically, but do I really think a 5'9", 150-pound corner from the 1950s is as good as Nathan Vasher? No. So I only have modern guys really. But yeah, I mean, all these guys are studs. I think Jade is probably going on to be a first-round draft pick, it looks like. So he'll follow suit with a lot of these boys. But I'm curious what y'all think, where you rate Jade in comparison to someone like Nathan Vasher or Quentin Jammer or Michael Huff or, Quandre Diggs even. A little different than like someone like Earl Thomas playing corner, obviously. But would love to hear it. We'll finish off the show with one last caller if you want to comment about DBU and who some of your favorites are or where you would rank Jade in the top 5. Because I'll be honest, guys, as a younger kid, like I don't remember Nathan Vasher playing, right? I can only go off what I see, stats of a lot of these guys playing. Michael Huff was a little bit before I started tuning into football because I was so little. But if you remember, like, please, I would love if you're an older guy to just tell me who you think is the best DB of all time. And thinking about DBU, I am really a horrible producer, guys. I pulled up this image and added it, and I've totally forgot this whole entire time while I'm talking about Jade to show the picture. There he is at the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. No one from Oklahoma can get in there. Even in Oklahoma, we dominate them. Walk in your trap, take over your trap, as Bankroll Fresh would say, rest in peace. But Jade, yeah, went up there, accepted the award, gave a speech. They put him in a shrine there. It is kind of funny that if you look at the trophy, it says Paycom, the Paycom Thorpe Award. They really had to throw an ad on the trophy. That is kind of funny. It's the current state of college football for you folks. Everything is an ad within an ad. But we're going to bring in our last caller here, talk about DBU, Jade. If anybody else wants to call in, but yeah, make sure you're sharing the show, guys. We're trying to, I know it's the off season, but way we'll keep it fresh as callers. And in the off season, I'll bring you guys on more, shoot the breeze with me and chew the fat, as one would say. Come on, just talk ball and speculate and reflect on the history and we're going to make random lists and whatnot and just kind of BS our way through the next 6 months, 7 months. But yeah, feel free to call in, but please share the show, share the links, guys, push it out. Let's get more people calling in. I appreciate y'all tuning in we've got 1,300 watching right now. It says most of you are on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, come over to the YouTube. We've got the most following on YouTube, but would love for you guys to come over to the YouTube at Inside Texas Football. Yeah, we've got the most watching on Twitter. Yes, come over to the YouTube, guys, and make sure to subscribe. But let's talk DBU. We've got our last caller coming in here, ranking Jade among some of the greats. Hey, how you doing? You're on the horn.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I would definitely have him top 5 for sure. I agree. Earl's definitely probably number 1. Him or Honest Tommy, of course.
I don't think Honest Tommy's an actual guy. I was just making someone up. Noble Doss.
Something about that Honest Tommy fella. I don't know.
Noble Doss. I mean, I love the names from these players in the 40s and 50s. But continue.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have him like 3 or 4, I think. He won the Thorpe Award. He was solid for this year. But obviously, I think he was pretty solidly the best DB in the country. I know a lot of people he's definitely rising up draft boards. I know he's probably a first rounder now. A lot of people, no one would have thought that before the season. So it's pretty awesome to see, the way he developed this year. And also, I'd probably Jammer's definitely up there. He might be 2 or 3.
Yeah, Quentin Jammer.
Quandre Diggs was really good, but he was on those bad Texas teams. He was.
Oh yeah,
he was awesome
Quandre Diggs was on those 2011 teams, right?
Yeah, he was right after Mac, or right at the end of the Mac era when they were not doing so hot.
Yeah.
So he probably will never get the credit he probably deserved.
Yeah, Quandre Diggs was good. Yeah, I mean Jade. That's I love to hear from people who remember better, but just from looking at statistics and the fact that he did win a Thorpe, I've got to think he's at least in the top couple corners. But when you look at DBs as a whole, putting in those safeties and whatnot, I'd say he's probably top 5. But I don't say he's best by any means, but he's one of the greats for sure. He'll be remembered forever, and he probably played himself into being a first round draft pick. A lot of the guys see him as now a top 10 even. So Jade, props to him because he's a total program guy. He stayed between the Herman to Sark era. He showed why you come back. He comes back. He not only wins, a Big 12 championship, but then he wins the Thorpe Award. He goes to the playoff back-to-back years. And it was a really cool story to see, and why you stay, why you develop. And he became an absolute leader. He had a huge pick, as we were talking about Sark's biggest game. He had a huge pick against Alabama. Jade had a really, really great year and a great career. Sad to see him go, but I think he will be the next great Texas DB in the NFL for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, I think he's had the Texas A&M win, the number 2 win for Texas under Sarkisian. I don't know about that one. I mean,
you don't think A&M
5? I think you might as well put. I mean, Texas win at Michigan one. That's the same caliber of win,
Yeah, I thought about putting at Michigan on there because Michigan was top 10 when they beat them. But Michigan, man, they were not a formidable.
A&M went 8-5 too. So
yeah, that's true. But Michigan in September was not as good as Michigan in November and December.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of them should be on there. But
all right, who would you replace A&M with?
I don't think you had Clemson on there. Clemson.
I did not have Clemson because
that's a better win than any.
They were a double digit. They were a double-digit point favorite. Clemson had beaten nobody ostensibly, and it was a 10-4 Clemson team.
Hey, I mean,
at home, I think
they beat SMU. That's better than anything A&M did.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I'm all for dogging on A&M, but my thing.
Or are they like the 5th team in 4th team in Texas? I mean, who knows?
The 5th best team in Texas, A&M.
Yeah, I mean you got Texas, obviously, TCU, SMU. I mean, these teams have had more success than they have in recent history.
Hey, don't forget Baylor.
Baylor's won a Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, talk to me.
It's not like the Aggies were winning in the Big 12 either. So
I know that's the funny part, but I just put that one on there because it felt major when he walked in there. They were 8-3 at the time. They were still ranked. They still could have gone to the SEC title, and he walked in there and just absolutely throated them.
Yeah, it was funny, but I don't know. It was kind of expected.
Yeah, it's got to be a top 5 win, though, I would say. That's probably about as hard as beating Oklahoma State last year.
Maybe. Probably not.
You don't want to give the Aggies any credit, huh?
I mean, would you rather Mike Gundy or Mike Elko?
Hey, that's one for the fans in College Station to think about.
Well, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for calling in. Guys, make sure to subscribe to Inside Texas. We're making the race to 20K. Let's try and get to 20K this offseason as we get ready for 2025 and beyond with Arch Manning. So subscribe, like the video. Check right now. Click out of this video. See if you're subscribed. If you're watching this on Twitter, go over to Inside Texas on YouTube. We've got enough followers on Twitter, but also follow us on Twitter. I do run the social medias, so I appreciate any social media follow we get. So follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and TikTok. We got our first TikTok to hit 1 million views. I think I got us up to like 6,000 followers on TikTok. That Arch Manning Man on the Street video I did. Got some nice views on TikTok, but just give us a follow on Instagram, guys, and make sure to like and subscribe. Share the video with a friend. Share it with your Texas friends. Share it with your friends that hate Texas. Let them tune in, and we were talking some smack about A&M. Let them get fired up. It always was the most fun in the regular season when we get Georgia fans and A&M fans and Arkansas fans in the mix. Just hate watching us. So share, like it. Make sure you're subscribed. Check your friend's phone. Check your girlfriend's phone. Your mom's phone. Grab it. Go to YouTube. Subscribe to Inside Texas. It helps us out. Helps me out. Trying to grow this thing. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Last thing. Obviously, there's 3 Texas Longhorns playing a game this weekend, not in basketball. We got Charles Omenihu and Ojimo, and, of course, Xavier Worthy, who is a dark horse to win the Super Bowl MVP. Worthy has been going off down the stretch with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm not as big of a fan of the Sunday game, but, I'll watch some Texas X's, and, you got to go to the Super Bowl party, do the whole thing. But I spiritually, I won't be there. Spiritually, I'm thinking about a Saturday in Austin, Texas, or in Athens when Texas walks in there. That's what I'm thinking about in my heart when I watch the NFL, especially with that goofy kickoff. But you got to root for your former Longhorns. Worthy has been absolutely killing it down the stretch with his scrimmage yards, the way they've been utilizing him, kind of similarly to Sark's offense. So it's been really fun to watch, guys. But thank you so much for tuning into On the Horn. I'm James Hayden. It's just me producing, hosting, doing it all, baby. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. And please subscribe, share the show with your friends. Check us out on social media. Follow me on Instagram if you're feeling generous. I'm trying to grow my personal brand as well. Appreciate you all, and hook 'em.